The Joe Show. Woo! Okay, today I'm gonna kind of just shoot from the hip, as they say. I have an idea of what I want to talk about, but I absolutely have no notes in front of me. I don't have any files open, nothing. Just a thought that's been going through my mind for a long time, if I'm honest with you. And I've wanted to talk about it, and I feel like now I've been doing what I'm doing long enough that I could actually speak to it, because of the experience that I've acquired over these past couple of years. And that's, asking or maybe responding to the question, what does it mean to walk by faith? There's a verse that talks about, and the just shall live by faith. But what does that mean? How do you live by faith? And then how do we get this term, I'm walking by faith? Well, what does that mean? Faith in who? Faith in what? And, how does that look like? Practically, how do you do that? And so I thought I would talk a little bit about my own experience over these past 3 years as I moved out from stable, from steady, employment and pay to launching out into doing missions as a 50-year-old in one of the poorest countries in the world with no stability whatsoever, politically, financially for the ministry or for us ourselves as the people who are carrying out the ministry. And so this phrase, oh man, walking by faith, stepping out in faith, believing, that's taken on a whole new meaning for Karen and I as we've stepped out into this new calling, this new phase. And I thought, let me just kind of address it with the experience that I've had, because I know some people are struggling, out there, and maybe you're a person who regularly listens to the podcast. Thank you, welcome to the Joe Show. But maybe you were just kind of Googling around looking for, how to walk by faith and, people who are doing it. And, I didn't grow up in church, but I was 17 when I became a Christian. So I've spent the majority of my life, in and around church. I've been around church people, church events. It's just been my life, and that's okay. I'm very happy with that, and I have no issue or problem stating that. And I remember in church, we used to have special speakers come in, on a special missions emphasis, and they would tell us these incredible stories, in whatever country they were in, and how, they were down to their last penny and they didn't know where the food was going to come from next. And then, out of the blue, somebody shows up at their house with dinner, or they go to the mailbox and there's a check in the mail for exactly the amount they need, right? And you're like, wow, that's crazy, that's amazing. And it is, but the truth is, it's really easy to hear somebody else talk about it. But now I'm that guest speaker. I'm the guy who comes in, on a missions Sunday and tells about these crazy stories or provisions. So I thought I would just share a little bit about that. I'm not going to give away names or, specifics, because I want to protect the people who have given. They do it because they love to do it, because they identify with what we're doing and they just want to give. So I don't want to, take away their anonymity or anything like that. But let me talk about what it means for me anyways to step out in faith and walk by faith. The simplest definition I could give, it's just about being obedient, saying yes to the call and worrying about, the bills later. Not being stupid, not being irresponsible, I'm not talking about throwing away a lifetime of study or finances, building equity in your home and saying, forget it, and just throw caution to the wind and let's go. No, I'm not talking about that. And that's definitely not what we've done. But we did say yes. We did say yes to stepping out, to launching Hope for Liberia, to starting to work in a country where there's no stability. In fact, today's October 13th in 2022, and as I'm recording today's podcast, Liberia is in deep, deep trouble. The ongoing war, conflict in the Ukraine, is affecting, their ability to export various foods. And one of the things that's really, really affecting the continent of Africa, but I can only speak to where I am in Liberia, is the availability of rice. This is the worst I've seen it in just the 3 short years that I've been there. There's been talks in the past about, there's a rice shortage, but I found out later that that was usually the government hoarding the rice so they could jack up the prices or keep the rice for themselves because an election was coming up and they wanted to give it to people to buy votes and all that kind of stuff. And so when I heard a few days ago that there was another rice shortage, I thought, somebody's up to something again. But it turns out there really is a shortage, and especially in Africa. And Liberia was already struggling. I've talked about this when I've traveled, and I give the stats. The average Liberian, works 14 hours a day, hustling in the streets, selling and buying, doing whatever they can, and they make $1.25 US per day. And I was in Liberia in September with a missions team, and we were able to buy 150 bags of rice. I mean, we just went up to the warehouse, bought 150 bags. They were $15 each. And, we did a rice outreach. We went to a really needy area, and we gave out rice kind of on a first come, first served basis. And it was beautiful. It was awesome. People were so grateful. It's always such a blessing and a privilege just to be able to see the smiles on people's faces, knowing that they're going to have several days worth of food because of some small action that you took. And so that was just last month. But as of a few days ago, there is a massive shortage now of rice. And those bags that were $15, US, that was for a 25 kilogram bag of rice. That same bag has now jumped up to 40 and even $45 US per bag. It's insane for anybody who lives there. Even if it was available, $45 compared to 15. I mean, that's triple the amount. And these people are still earning the same amount they were before. So it's become nearly impossible. But more than just the price hike, it's the actual availability. My colleague there spent the entire day a few days ago scouring the city looking for bags of rice to buy because our school is about to start up in a few days on the 17th. And we need to have the rice in stock to start making the meals for the kids when they show up to class. And I think he said he spent 10 hours scouring the city, and he was only able to get 6 bags of rice. And even then they were $35 US a piece. And so we have this, huge shortage problem. In fact, even as recent as yesterday, people are lining up for 2 and 3 days at a time down at the docks at the port where the ships come in with containers. And as soon as they offload the bags of rice, people are just desperately trying to buy bags of rice. And so they're not even making it to the market, into the warehouses in town. And so it's a really desperate situation. And so when we said yes to the call for Liberia, I'm telling you, we didn't do it for the money. We did it because we felt passionate about the call. We fell in love with the people, with the culture, and we knew that this is what we were supposed to do. And, Karen and I have made the statement, well, we're going to have to walk by faith because, we left a full-time job, a couple of full-time jobs, good pay, stability. There was recognition where we were. Everything was good. And then we walked away from that to say yes to the call. And sometimes you find yourself going, oh man, where's it going to come from? God, there's barely enough money in the account to send the money to buy the rice for school, to get fuel for the bus, to pay the teachers. It's just barely enough to send there. And how are we ourselves going to live? And so we've had to kind of contend with that, come to terms with that. And, what does that mean? And it has been amazing. I can't explain it. I don't even know if I could write a book about it. I'm going to try to fill up a podcast, about what it means to walk by faith. But there have been many times in these 3 years where we honestly didn't know where the money was going to come from because it had been so tight. And, we started in January 2020, and then 2 months later, the global pandemic hit and everything was shut down and people weren't traveling. and people's futures were in question. People didn't know what was going on, so people were holding back, understandably so. Hey, I can't give to Africa right now. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow right here in Canada. And so I understood why people were hesitant to give. But even in that time of a financial uncertainty on a global perspective, remember, it wasn't just Canada going through this, not just the US or this country, but I mean, the world was going through it. During that time, we just saw the finances increase. I mean, it was slow at first, and then as we began to step out and just say yes to the call and obey and build and do whatever we felt that we were supposed to do, people began to respond. And so, like I said, to protect, the names and, the whatever of the people who gave, in 2021, when the pandemic was raging and we didn't know how we were going to pay the bills and build a school and, pay the staff and do all those things that we had to do, we just had to say, God, you called us to this, right? You have to be really sure that this is what he called you to do. And I remember my prayer when I left my last big ministry posting. I said, God, whatever I do next, it's got to be something. It's got to be a ministry that I can't do without you. Like, you have to be involved. And so when we stepped out to build the school, through just a random email because somebody saw one of my YouTube videos on what I was doing in Liberia, this couple from another part of the world ended up sowing just over $300,000, actually much more than about $360,000 into the ministry that year, so that we could finish off the church, we could finish off the community center, we could build the school. I mean, it was absolutely unreal. And even this year in 22, when we launched out to build this, the orphanage that we're in the process of doing right now, we had a few $1,000s to start. We said, hey, let's buy some bricks. Let's see what happens. And so as things began to open up and I was able to get into churches, I would just go and, share the vision, give a report. Hey, this is what we've done. This is what we've been able to do. And people began to resonate with, or what we were doing began to resonate with them, and people began to give. And, I was in a small town here in Ontario, and, this couple pulled me aside after the service and said, wow, we really feel that we want to help you guys in a significant way. And you're like, okay, that's great. That's amazing. I gave them our ministry information, and then went off to British Columbia to do ministry and kind of forgot about it, really. And then you come back to the post office, just like you read in the books, just like you hear those missionaries say. And we needed just over $20,000 to complete the next phase of the orphanage, which was to pour all the concrete footings and secure cement and blocks. And we go to the post office, and you know what I'm going to say? There was a check there for $25,000. It was just what we needed in that moment. And that's part of this walking by faith, not walking in stupidity, not walking in ignorance, but by faith, saying, I know that this is what I've been called to do. And I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to give it everything, 100% of my time, my energy, and my focus, and I'm going to trust God. And you know what? That same couple, a couple of months later, they sent an additional, are you ready? $50,000 to go towards the orphanage and the ministry. I mean, it just absolutely blew my mind. We burst into tears when we opened up the envelope. It was just so beautiful to see that affirmation and that confirmation of the call. That God said, if you step out, I will meet you. I will be with you every step of the way. And one of the verses that has stuck with me is when Joshua in the Old Testament was getting ready to lead the Israelites, and he was a bit scared because he had to follow Moses, And God said, Joshua, as I was with Moses, I will be with you. And so I think of all the great men and women who have gone before us and have done missions in foreign countries and have served. And you hear all their great stories of provision. God said, Joe, Karen, don't worry. As I was with them, so will I be with you. And that's been a great comfort. And it's been absolutely amazing, to watch that happen. And I want to address, one of the comments that you hear sometimes from people. Oh, if you're doing the gospel, like, why are you asking for money? Why don't you do it for free? The gospel was free. Jesus died for us. So why do you have to raise money? And there's a lot of ways that I could answer that. And I want to be nice because I'm a nice guy. But the question is bothersome. It really is bothersome because what do you do for free? What can you do that's free? People say, well, you should just go there and preach and give everything away. I said, okay, let's think about that. So I had to go to Africa. Okay. So I had to get on a plane. So I needed money, right, for the flight. Didn't matter if I told the airlines, hey, I'm doing really good stuff. You should give me a ticket for free. They won't. So, you got to pay for that. I had to leave my house to go to the airport. Well, who's going to pay for the house, right? I got to live somewhere. Doesn't have to be a big house, a fancy house, just a place to live. Whether you own it or you rent it, you have to pay for that. I'm assuming that when you step out of your house, you're not naked, you're clothed, and so you have to pay for those shoes, the socks, those pants, that shirt. You get what I'm saying. On and on it goes. And I don't know why we're so afraid to say it takes money to do ministry. That's okay. That's okay. We can take the money that people give and do ministry. We can change lives. We can do all kinds of great and amazing things. So it all comes back to this. What does it mean to walk by faith? I've shared just a couple of examples of how just when we needed it, we needed to get a school bus, $20,000 came in to buy the school bus. We needed to get, medical supplies, $12,000 worth of medical supplies were just given to us out of the blue. We needed laptops, computers for the school so the kids can begin to learn how to do computers so that they can move forward in life and get a good job as they go ahead. What happens? A church in Scarborough says, hey, we have 10 MacBooks that we would like to donate to you. Walking by faith, saying yes to God, saying yes to the call, not always having everything worked out, not knowing exactly how it's going to go down. We don't have a plan. We don't have policies. We don't have procedures. We just say, God, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to trust you. Now, I could do another 20 minutes and tell you a whole bunch of other stories, but that's not why you're here today. You're not here to hear about, what I've done. But maybe you just need to be encouraged today. Maybe you're thinking about stepping out and doing something and you don't know how it's going to go. Well, I would say pray about it, of course. Talk to a spouse if you're married. If you have someone in your life, a parent, a good friend, a pastor, just somebody who's close to you, bounce it off of them. And, let's kind of make sure that we're not doing something crazy here and that it's not our own idea. Let's agree that this is God who is leading us. And once you get that assurance, yes, this is what I feel I'm to do. As a person who's been walking by faith to a person who's considering walking by faith, let me tell you, it's not going to be easy. It's going to test you. It's going to push you, man, to the brink of yourself. You're going to think, why did I leave my job? Why did I stop doing that other thing that was a sure thing to do this? It's going to push you. And if you're not called, it will break you. But if you are called, like I feel that we are, let me just tell you this. Walking by faith, although so difficult at times, can be the most rewarding thing you will ever do. So if you're thinking about stepping out and doing that thing that you sense you're supposed to do, let me encourage you. I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you're thinking about it and you're really feeling and sensing that this is what you're supposed to do and this is where you're supposed to go, go. Start walking. Put one foot in front of the other and just start walking. You know, you don't have to have everything worked out. You don't need to know everything. I always tell my wife, I don't need to know everything. Just give me a direction. That way, okay, let's start walking. Well, what's out there? I don't know, but let's start walking. Let's see. And then along the way, hey, you might trip, but a lot of times you just keep walking. You keep walking. And before you know it, you're going to arrive at the destination that you're supposed to be at. And when you get there, man, there's so much fulfillment. There's joy. There's peace. There's so many things that are waiting for you on the other side. So if you're a person who's listening to this today and saying, I don't know if I got what it takes to walk by faith, that's a good question. It's okay to have that conversation with yourself and with others. And once you determine this is what I'm supposed to do, I know it, I feel it with everything in my body, every cell in my body says, this is what I'm supposed to do it. Do it. Gather a team of people around you who will pray with you, who will stand with you, who will be that moral support, and if necessary, that financial support. But be willing to say yes. Be willing to step out. Put one foot in front of the other. Start that walk. And you don't know where it's going to take you exactly, but it's going to be where you're supposed to be. So let me encourage you. It's okay to walk by faith. The Joe Show.